This is Rappler presents HIPE Stories, a show about high-impact Pinoy entrepreneurs. And that's Pinoy with an asterisk, which means anyone who's committed to this country. In partnership with Rappler, we bring you the entrepreneurs who dream big, scale up, and pay it forward here in the Philippines. I'm Manny Ayala. Joining us today is tech entrepreneur and investor Ron Hose. Ron Hose is the founder of Coins.ph, which was acquired by Gojek in one of the Philippines' largest tech exits. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you, Manny.
So, Ron, most of the world knows about what you've built and what happened afterwards, right? Which is basically you became the first and so far largest exit in this generation of founders. But most people don't actually know how you ended up here. So maybe to begin, I'll just ask you, how did you end up in the Philippines?
Sure. I mean, it was actually very purpose-driven. So before I came here, I worked in the Silicon Valley. I had one startup that I started that was acquired by Telefonica.
Okay. What year was that?
We founded it in 2007.
Yeah.
And was acquired around 2012.
Okay. Cool.
And then I spent some time in venture capital for the private investment fund of Eric Schmidt.
Oh, Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google.
Yes, then CEO, now chairman.
Yeah.
And I guess, I wanted to apply what I've learned in the Valley in a way that made significant impact on people's lives. And I felt that, in emerging markets, right, you still have so many opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
So I moved to Philippines in I think it was 2013, roughly 2012, 2013. And it was, I actually looked at all of Southeast Asia.
You did?
Yeah.
Were you backpacking across Southeast Asia?
So it started off, I was traveling, and then I sort of saw the market conditions, meaning that, a lot of basic services, there was a great difficulty of bringing basic services into kind of the provinces and the farther out regions. But at the same time, people were starting to use Facebook, and the internet proliferation was starting to increase. There was, a few more, smart devices out, and I figured, this is going to be the conduit essentially for delivering change. And that's really what enticed me to kind of drop what I was doing in the Valley and relocate here.
Yeah.
And then I looked basically country by country, and to make, long story short, I think, Philippines for me was very enticing. Young population, tech savvy, English speaking, so
I remember something about you at around this time.
Yes.
I at the time, I had a little incubator called Hatch, and I remember you wrote, I believe, the first report on the Philippine startup ecosystem, right? Back in 2013 with Beryl Lee and some other folks, like Boe, right? What was that project all about?
So essentially, we were, I was spending a bunch of time studying the ecosystem here, trying to understand what was going on, what opportunities exist. The tech ecosystem was very, very early. There was, just a handful of startups.
I like to say that back then, you could fit the entire VC industry in my Hyundai StarX van.
We would take most of the founders together. Like, we went to Boracay. It was really not that, it was small.
Yeah.
But there was promise, and we figured, okay, if we start to draw this out and put in the presentation, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, that would help entice more investors and more entrepreneurs to come into the country and and take advantage of these opportunities. Because there's definitely more opportunities than one person, one company, or one even venture fund could tackle on their own. So you need all these resources to come in. So that was really the purpose behind that presentation, and I think after that, Beryl actually took it forward with the government, and they started building what was then the startup roadmap.
Wait, so why Philippines? Let's say versus Indonesia, right, which is 2.5 times bigger, or Malaysia, which is a much higher per capita GDP than us. Why the Philippines?
So I think, still, for some reasons I believe today exists. I mean, it's an English-speaking market. Actually, it kind of bridges in between, East Asian culture and Western culture because of, the history of the Philippines. It's easy to build, when you speak a common language, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to build culture in an organization. I think the inherent culture in the Philippines, I think, is very conducive for working. And for me personally, actually, I just felt the connection. Like I've traveled all over Southeast Asia, and this was like the one place where I felt like, okay, if I'm gonna be living somewhere for, building a business and living somewhere for 5-10 years, it has to be somewhere where I really, deeply connect into the country and into the people and the culture, the local existing culture.
I remember we had a conversation a long time ago. You said, well, you were looking at the problems on the ground here, right? Big problems in education, big problems in healthcare, big problems obviously in financial inclusion. What did you see that made you choose the financial inclusion problem to solve?
So I think it's a combination of things, right? One is, the intensity of the pain. So if you look at 10% of the GDP of this country is coming from OFWs, right?
Yeah.
Like millions and millions of Filipinos are living abroad, sending money home, right? And at the time were paying 6 to 8%, just to send money back home. That's 1 month out of the year they're working for free, and these are people who are away from their family, their kids, right? That's pain. If you're living in the province and you need to get on 2 tricycles to go and pay your electric bill every month, that's a real pain. Like somebody has to take like 2 or 3 hours out of their day every single month, just to pay a bill. When there's a big pain, it makes it easier to overcome a lot of friction. And we were building very, very early in the ecosystem, and so there was a lot of friction. So that I think that kind of equation worked well.
How did you frame the problem back then? What were you telling investors, right? How did you explain this big project of yours?
Sure. So I tend to look at a lot of things like from both a macro and a micro point of view, right? And the macro explanation was actually very simple. It's like, look at, we have 100 and something million people at the time, right? 80 to 90% of them are completely unbanked.
Yeah.
And it's not because of bad will on the bank's part. It's because it's not economical to serve them with the existing banking model, right? If you need to, do an account opening at a branch, give an umbrella, all those things, right? Then you have to like service that customer at the branch every single time, and then that person has on average, maybe 5,000, 10,000 peso in deposits.
Yeah.
The bank is going to lose money, so that's why they're not able to serve that. And then you want to look at what's changing in the market. And at the time it was mobile penetration. Okay, it was only 30% smartphone penetration, but we made the assumption, okay, this is going to go from 30 to 100.
Yeah.
And the moment you have a smartphone in someone's hand, you can deliver all those services at a fraction of the cost, meaning now you can actually open up financial services to 150 million people.
You got to believe, right? And you believe probably back then, cost of data is just going to go lower. Internet speeds are just going to go higher, right? So some of these frictions that we have technically are probably going to go away, which they have.
Yeah, and also it's a lot easier to find a Wi-Fi hotspot than to travel to the next bank. I mean, we're sitting here in Manila, and I've been spending more and more of my time in the province, that, and it's actually very good for me because it helps me like connect and really understand what people's day-to-day challenges are. Still, like the majority of Filipinos live outside of the city, and until this time, like most people are not living within range of a bank. Definitely not of an ATM.
So there is a definition of entrepreneurship I really love, right? It goes like this. An entrepreneur is somebody who creates value without regard for resources currently controlled. Meaning, I may not have resources, but that's okay. I'm going to create value. So you came to the Philippines, like you washed up on these shores without 3 things that I think in a country like this you need, right? Which is capital, connections, credibility, right? How does a guy from Silicon Valley just show up here and create this massive business that you're able to sell to a unicorn in Indonesia, right? Without these things?
Yeah, I will credit that back to the Philippines.
To the Philippines?
Yeah, because and I think this is the reason why why I came here and why I stayed here. Everybody like everybody put their hands forward to help. A lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I could not have done any of this on my own. And people that maybe didn't know me, didn't do it for a financial incentive. You'd be surprised. So many doors open for us. Business partners, the BSP, was very receptive. This is very hard, but at the same time, it's not that. But at the same time, it would have never been possible without that mindset that I think is actually very strong here. I think every founder, entrepreneur who's not from here, who comes here, will tell you this. There's an open, warm culture, and I think when you knock on doors, people here listen.
I'm going to ask you about another critical ingredient, right, to success in any business, right? You need capital, you need a market, you also need people, right? So especially in something that's in fintech, where the stakes arguably are higher, let's say, than a typical B2C, right? With the B2C or e-commerce, maybe I lose that, Hello Kitty bag that I ordered. But when you're talking about fintech, these are people's life savings, right? So you really need a much higher bar, right, of security and robustness. 2014, right, you started your business. I'm willing to bet, right, that you couldn't find all of the engineering talent that you needed at that point, right?
Yeah, the infrastructure for building a startup has evolved a lot since. I think back in 2014, there were a whole bunch of gaps that made it very difficult. I think one, of course, was the scaling of talent, like finding people who had the experience and expertise in these digital roles, in tech roles. Another one was actually even finding outside providers, like lawyers, accountants that understood what we were doing. I think now we can go to a number of law firms in the Philippines and have somebody draft, like a employee share option plan. But back then, no.
So focusing specifically on the tech talent, what was your approach to solve that gap?
It was a mix. I think part of it was hiring actually very early on and upskilling, and kind of long view on talent. And the second one was drawing talent back here. So I always say there's no shortage of talent in the Philippines ever. There never was. There is definitely a shortage of experience and skills. But we have a huge Filipino diaspora. We just need to entice them to come back here, and if the right opportunity exists and they connect to the mission, they will come back. So we brought back Filipinos home. We brought non-Filipinos who had the right experience and expertise, and that knowledge permeated through the organization. And so after 2 or 3, 4 years of doing this, we had a pool of strong, experienced talent in-house already.
From what I recall, right, early on, you were able to tap into a kind of global talent network that works side by side with folks that you found here, right? And then, I guess the local teams leveled up, so to speak, right, working with kind of this global caliber talent.
Yeah, I think it was a mix. So there were foreigners who we brought in who had very specific skills, and some of them are still here building new businesses in the Philippines, which is great. And then some of them were Filipinos who were in Singapore, or Filipino parents, children of Filipino immigrants in the U.S., which we basically sold on the vision of doing something better here. None of them came for pay because we were a startup. We really couldn't pay that much, and also we couldn't we couldn't afford it. But we sold them on what we're doing, right? And being able to do something meaningful and being in an environment they're gonna, themselves learn and grow, and that worked really well.
What was the most surprising thing you encountered? Trying to start up a business in the Philippines.
I encounter surprises every single day. This is a slightly chaotic environment, right? Which. For me, I really like it. I enjoy it. I think most entrepreneurs will. There's not always very set rules on certain things, especially in the space that we operated in at the time. Even regulation was very early. We helped draft some of the early crypto regulation. We were one of the first to get an EMI license. a lot of stuff was kind of just like not, not very clear and not and hazy, and you have to kind of be comfortable operating in that environment.
So that reminds me, actually, you built your platform on, or at least one major component was crypto, right, and blockchain,
Yeah.
right? And at the time, it was even more unclear than it is today. But what was the thinking? Because one of the things I observed is you weren't like one of these sort of super hype companies where, it was crypto this. You kind of built the layer, but in the end, it was a very good, solid payments platform without hyping, the blockchain part of it.
Yeah, because at the end, we knew what we're doing. We're providing a service to a customer. The customer doesn't care, what tech you're using. That hype, doesn't go in that direction, right? Like we needed to make sure, like, of very few things that were done, like proper service, solving a real problem, and building trust. And that's really what it was. If you went on our website, you would see nothing about the underlying tech. Exactly for that reason, because I wanted to shine, on what we're offering.
So you didn't call it Coins.coins or something?
No, in fact, we always looked at the name as a little bit of a hindrance, so we actually would have preferred the more generic one, to be honest.
Okay, so that was your journey. That was the startup phase. Let's move a little bit to the scaling up phase. When did you know you were onto something, right? When did you know it was time now to go and raise money and turbocharge the hell out of this thing?
Yeah, so when we started, I had all my cash into this, basically everything.
Really?
I just went for broke, right?
Your entire net worth was in this thing.
Everything was in. We started to see actually sales ramp up really early, right away. There were people transacting, and I was actually a little bit jaw dropped because I'd started a bunch of things before, right? And, for every company you fund, you start at least a few things. You get through the prototype phase, and then you see how much pickup there is, right? There was just unprecedented. It was the first time I saw something just ramp up so fast.
Yeah.
And every time we launch a new service, it was the same, right? And we're lucky. I think we raised relatively late. I think it was 6 or 8 months in, because I wanted to make sure the model is working before I put fuel behind it. And then we're lucky to have Eric Schmidt's fund and a few other really great investors come in and write us a seed check.
Yeah.
At that point, but we were already, I think, close to cash flow positive, if not cash flow positive.
Wow.
At that juncture.
In year one, year two?
Year one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so the pitching was relatively simple and straightforward, right? Since you were already generating all this cash.
I think yes and no, because again, early ecosystem, getting people from outside to invest into the Philippines, not easy. There were no precedents.
Yeah.
So a number of really good funds passed because we don't know the market. There have not been any known exits there, no known founders, companies. So it was not a walk in the park, but I think we were able to get good names.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of these guys think, oh, Philippines, wild, wild west, no rule of law. Somebody's gonna take your money, right?
I think possibly, and I think also there's just a straight out, okay, what's our exit strategy? These are financial investors, right? So they may trust you on the market problem, the business model, but VC investors have a very specific time horizon, 5 to 7 years, and in their perspective, okay, who's going to be buying this thing, right? 5 or 7 years from now, there's been no history of that happening.
Would you say that you guys chose a blitz scaling path to growth? And by blitz scaling, I mean, you raise a lot of money and essentially you go and buy market share, right? And you're building very, very fast.
No, I would say absolutely no.
Tell me why.
We grew very fast. I think when we were acquired, we were at about 10 million registered users or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was in the span of less than 5 years.
Yeah.
But no, because we knew that we were capital constrained. It's hard to find, at that time it's hard to raise large amounts of money. We raised,
especially in the Philippines, right?
Especially in the Philippines, right? Our first round, I can't remember, was around, I think we raised $1 million or $500,000, not a lot.
Yeah.
And the Series A was, big of $5 million. $12 million raised altogether. We couldn't afford to do a massive customer buy. Instead, we got, we were just we tried to be as smart as we could about how we got the customers. So value proposition, a lot of kind of growth hacking, basically building the product in a way that facilitated word of mouth and growth. And we took advantage of that.
Yeah.
We would have never been able to compete with like any other larger players if we had to do it on a dollar-to-dollar basis.
So as you were growing, right, so you're going through this hockey stick trajectory, right? The common view is when you do that, things break, right? I mean, did you go through that experience? Did things start to break at a certain point? And then what did you do about it?
Yeah, things break all the time, right? I'm known to be like slightly paranoid in how I, in how I build stuff, and building a lot of kind of checks and balances. And I think that kind of kept the breakages at check. So we did a lot of engineering. I think one of every entrepreneur has like their own like strengths and weaknesses, and I think one of the things that helped me like coming to the table, I'm an engineer in my training, and I've written software myself. I was CTO for my first company, CTO and then product. We're just very diligent in how we build things. We always knew it, like we can't afford like a single failure. My phrase was, we're picking up pennies in front of a steamroller, because like in the financial services, every transaction is a very small payment, like very, very small. You earn like maybe a fraction of a peso or a peso, but if you mess up one, you're out of business.
So, you correctly identified fintech as a fertile place to go and start building a business around. And if you look at the Endeavor portfolio, we probably have the biggest representation in fintech, right? There are 6 digital banking licenses. I think there's 4 more up for grabs. A few companies have come in and acquired rural banks, right, in order to avoid having to get a license. Where are we right now, do you think, in fintech? All these issues that you saw back in 2013, have many of them been addressed, or are they starting to get addressed?
You might not like my answer.
I like any answer.
So, I think some of them are solved, some of them are not. I think there's room for a lot of innovation and still a lot of room for entrepreneurship and disruption in financial services in the Philippines.
Yeah.
I think we have way too of a strong bias to financial services in the startup ecosystem here.
We're too biased for fintech.
Partially, people see like what works and what was successful, and they're like, okay, let me go in there, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the opportunity is there. That means the opportunity was there, right? But as a founder, you want to be where the ball is landing next, and like there's no shortage of other areas.
Tell me some of these
where we
areas.
can that we can drive improvement here. Anywhere, healthcare, education, agriculture. Like look at the Philippines. We're like huge, fertile land, but we're still importing rice.
Yeah.
Why? Right? Yeah. Where are the entrepreneurs like going in and disrupting the agriculture, improving the supply chain and distribution. There's tons and tons of stuff to do. We have to let go of those biases, right? Because the rewards go to the ones that are contrarian and right.
Yeah.
Right? Like when we started working on coins, no one was thinking, fintech Philippines, right?
Yes.
No one's thinking, agri-Philippines right now. No one's thinking, some people are thinking out loud. Let me rephrase this, but like less people are thinking about those spaces, and that's precisely the reason why why people should go there.
Okay, so you're an angel investor, right?
Yeah.
So are you seeing any cool entrepreneurs that you have confidence they will be able to build something and scale it and succeed? Are we seeing any of these?
There's.
Young Turks emerging.
I think there's way more now. There was, a big wave of, investment in startups, like, after the Coins exit, because that kind of gave the market confidence. We saw more funds coming up, more entrepreneurs. I think out of that, we're going to see some larger exits coming. I think there's a bit of a cool down now, but I think that's also like a, partially like a, like a human bias, right? Because you usually see the ones who are not making it first. Yeah. And the ones who made it, they succeed after like 6, 7, 8 years. and we haven't seen those yet. But yeah, I mean, I think the ecosystem is a lot healthier and a lot bigger, and yeah, than it was 10 years ago.
Let's
100%.
flash back, right, to the 2013 Impact Report by Ron Hosenberley, right? I took a screenshot of, there was like a summary page back then. You had this, remember, why Philippines, right? Fastest growing economy in Asia. I think still check, right? We're still growing 5 to 6% a year. Investment grade, I believe we're still investment grade. Low operating costs, English-speaking, Western-minded, heavy social users, large local market, minimal competition, right?
Agreed.
Today, in 2025, what are the reasons? Like, how would you convince a foreign investor to say, Philippines, man, this is where you should be looking at now?
Actually, all those same points, if you read them, they're true. There's a little bit more competition now, which is a good thing. That's what we wanted to create.
Yeah.
We wanted to have more founders and more companies coming in, right? So I think certain areas have been saturated, right?
Yeah.
Like the fintech space, e-commerce maybe, but still there's huge opportunities in those areas. And then there's whole areas of the kind of like the innovation map that are like completely untouched. Like, look, we have a huge BPO industry here.
Yeah.
That has to be transformed because AI is obviously going to change that significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a risk or an opportunity is still an open question.
Yeah.
I always like to look at things as opportunities, and I think the AI it might actually drive more need for these call centers because so much more stuff is getting automated, and then you need that kind of second level of that second level of control above that.
Mm-hmm.
And are we upskilling people to that? Are we creating? Are we running ahead of that train?
Well, I was going to ask, right? I mean, in order for all of these opportunities you pointed out, right, whether it's agriculture or healthcare, you're going to need leaders to lead these things, right? So, are we seeing more entrepreneurial leaders today than back in 2013?
We're seeing more, but not enough. I think not enough. I think it's still difficult. Look, the economies are such that if you're a strong engineer, if you have really good training and you're capable, Singapore is going to try and entice you to move there, right?
Yeah.
The U.S. is going to, companies in the U.S. are going to try and going to try and pull our best talent. And like the most important resource for us, like you say, it's the people, it's the founders, it's the engineers.
Yeah.
It's that it's the people who actually make businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to be very mindful and have a concerted strategy as a nation to both retain the ones we have here and attract. Like if you take that view again, Philippines as a startup, right? Our tech ecosystem as a startup, people are poaching talent from us day in and day out.
Yeah.
Like our best people are not here.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best are here, but there's a lot they're taking. Like if you go around in the U.S. and you throw your stone at any tech company there, you're gonna find like, smart, experienced, knowledgeable Filipinos. If I think we spoke about this at some point. The day that we are drawing all these people back in, man, every country in the region should really be afraid because like the talent distribution of Filipinos globally is insane.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a magic wand. Okay, so now you have a magic wand, right? And you can kind of direct outcomes in government and in private sector. What are some of the things these two big pools of capital and talent need to start thinking about for that to happen, right? For all this talent to start coming back.
Sure. So I'll talk about actually public sector because private sector is just incentive based, right? So like if there is talent, they will invest, right? Like I think more capital will flow in if there are more, more backable entrepreneurs because opportunities there's no shortage of, right? So it's a simple equation, right? So then the question is, what can government do to drive talent back and develop talent locally, right? I think that's the key thing, and I think we need to find ways to incentivize them. I mean, Chile had a really great program.
Started Chile, right?
Yeah, that was very successful in both bringing entrepreneurs in and also actually they structured it in a way that those entrepreneurs needed to spend their time and resources in upskilling local talent.
Yeah.
Right. So this is one model. There's a bunch of different ways, but I mean. We need the first. You need a budget for this, a budget and somebody who's willing to run it.
Yeah. What do you think? This is a question from left field, right? But
Yeah.
what do you think a minimum amount of money is for the government to play with to make an impact?
Not a lot. I think that's the thing. I mean, look, coins, right? Like $12 million,
Yeah,
right? To build coins from it created,
Yeah.
$100 million worth of value,
yeah,
and attracted and skilled so many people, right? And look at the impact of that in terms of additional investment following into the country.
yeah,
So it's small amounts. I think you can deploy, even if you deployed like $5 or $10 million, but deployed it judiciously and in the right way,
Right.
in giving people grants and controlling, how those grants are spent, et cetera.
Yeah.
You could probably bring an army of 50, 100 founders,
yeah,
50, 100 good founders. It will make a huge impact. If out of those you get like 5, 10, companies that are worth 100,
Mm-hmm.
$200 million, one or two that are worth in the billions,
yeah.
what's your return on that? I mean, if
That's right, that's
right. Not just the cash return, but like the human capital return.
Yeah. So we need a free flow of capital. We also need a free flow of talent. Would you say that there are still, kind of impediments to getting talent from around the globe to come and build something here? Or is that less of an issue these days?
Look, there's a bunch of things around government and ease of doing business that can be improved. I think actually, I'll say government is actually improving them.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing the progress. Like those things are on people's minds. So I don't think it's as important to push on that agenda. I think visas are important because some of the time you need to bring in talent that is not Filipino and can't stay here. It's still hard. I mean, this. I'm here for 12 years. I'm still coming in on a tourist visa
Yeah.
after 12 years. And if you want to really have talent come here and embed itself like long term, you need to have some kind of you need to see their future here.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Not be a temporary thing. But I mean, in general, I think what it is, it's really about the really important thing is just incentivizing and helping basically support.
Yeah. So going back to what will it take to entice more people to come and, build their futures here? There's always the question of exits, right? When they see an exit, they get excited.
Yeah.
And really, since your exit, we haven't seen anything of note, right? Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I think we will see, right? And I think it's a bit of a time horizon thing.
Yeah.
One, a lot of the funding came, just after our exit.
Yeah.
Like if you look at it, there's kind of took a
That's
bit.
right.
Like
Explosion,
the
right?
ecosystem kind of
2020,
exploded, yeah.
2021, yeah.
And then, a lot of founders got funding. Some, I think, some rightfully so. Some, investments were like a little bit, fast and loose, right? And so the ones that were, the good investments are going to take time to mature,
Yeah.
right? Like we are, barely 5 years from, right? It's going to take that time horizon. It's not an easy exit market.
Yeah.
So it's going to take some time, but I think we're going to see those.
Next couple of years, hopefully, touch wood.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very careful with predictions, but I think I think even less than that.
Well, it's very encouraging to me to see a bunch of these young Pinoys who've studied overseas for many years and worked overseas and now beginning to come back. Like my nephew, Gabby. I don't know if you've met Gabby, and his fiance, right? Both worked. So he worked at Square, worked at Cash App. Super competent, right? And now, believes in the Philippine story. How do you get more of those people to understand how much potential there is here? What's a practical way to send this message out?
Yeah, I think that's the second arc. Also, you're right about that. And by the way, there's a bunch of them, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, starting from Paul Rivera and Caliber, and now
That's the first wave, right? With Dexter and
with Dexter,
Paul,
yeah, and then
and Roland Ross,
Roland
and
Ross, and King D,
Yeah.
and I mean Stephanie with Thinking Machines, who
That's right.
of course grew up here, but I mean already was starting a great career in the Valley, and then came back.
Camille Ang with HIPE Health, right?
Yeah, so it's happening.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is actually communication and marketing. I think one of the more successful campaigns we're all going to remember is, it's more fun in the Philippines.
Yes.
Right. And that was, that I think did the country like a lot of good. And we need to kind of go out and market again because underrated. The market is underrated.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, we have to find those, those Filipino founders and executives that are sitting there right now, in, maybe in the Valley, maybe in Singapore, and remind them, that actually their best and highest use of time is here. And the second advantage of it, they can be here.
Yep.
I mean, if you had the choice between being here and being in the U.S., come on, it's so much better to live in the Philippines. I think a lot of people leave because of economic opportunity.
Yep.
Let's create it. Remind them that it already exists here. And then,
coding during the day,
path back is easy.
surfing in the afternoon. What better way to build a business is there?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, when you're running a startup, it's going to be coding in the day and coding in the afternoon. But
yeah. Oh, but that's a really good idea. I think a lot of people, when they think about how do you stimulate the ecosystem, they think bring in money, fix regulations. But you just pointed something.
No, we need the roadshow.
It's the stories, right? Yeah. It's the capital, but it's the stories, right? It's the inspiring stories that capture the imagination.
The capital will follow the talent.
Yeah.
And we need the roadshow. Take all those founders. We all go and remind people that that of what's here.
Okay. So as we come to an end with this little chat, obviously the world knows your endpoint, right, with Coins, which was this kind of historical exit, for the Philippine ecosystem. But most people don't know what you've been up to since then. So what have you been up to since then?
I've been doing a lot of mentoring and early stage investing.
Yeah.
I think part of it is kind of my own passion, my own interest. From very early on, even writing the Philippine Startup Report, when we wrote it, the goal was really to help the ecosystem grow, and with a mindset that kind of rising tide lifts all ships. And I'm still very committed to that vision.
Yeah.
I think we have a little bit of a responsibility in being kind of like the first high-profile exit, in helping set the culture here.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's a good question. What do you think the role of an entrepreneur should be, right, in a wider sense, right, within an ecosystem? What's the role of an entrepreneur in society, in fact?
Right. I mean, so you can show off your fancy cars, right, or you can invest that back into the ecosystem and help other entrepreneurs and founders. And I think the message that we want to send across, right, is that your success is not financial, it's in the impact that you're making around you, right? So being able to support other founders, other entrepreneurs is just, for me, a way of multiplying my ability to impact, right?
That's right. Well, the one of the words that's super important to Endeavor, as you know, is multiplier, right? And what a multiplier is an entrepreneur who is both commercially amazing, right? They have the ability to scale something up to a large success. But the other side of being a multiplier is taking that success and reinvesting in the next generation, right? So if you do that well, you create an exponential effect, right? 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes whatever, right? It grows and grows and grows. Do you actually observe founders adopting this behavior, right? This kind of multiplier mindset?
I think so. I think that's what I'm saying is I think we're carving that culture here. This entire cohort of founders has been, from the time that I started, I think, and before that and after, actually, even when I came, that culture was already here. It's a very tight-knit community that helps each other. There's very rarely, if you call someone for help, they will not help you. And we want to retain that. We want to ensure that this is culture gets set by the people, and we are a young ecosystem, and so we have the ability to engrave, the source code of what this is going to look like. And I think Endeavor has done a great job at instilling these values. Is this basically setting the benchmark at impact versus at financial gain. Financial gain is an important aspect of starting a company and of business, right? But it's not the only one.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, like I said, like I've observed personally through my career, even when hiring, employees and bringing people in, we're talking about bringing talent back, you will see that people's motivations are not purely financial. I think, and that's really the key thing that, we as a community can both, help fertilize, right, by supporting each other, and also utilize to drive growth, because we, even if our resources are less than Singapore or, Germany, the heart is there. People want to come back and do stuff here to make this a better place. And we drive on that as our, as a resource.
Well, that's a very heartening message. That's why we do what we do at Endeavor, because we know there are people like you, right? There are other people out there. We just need to find them, right? And help them be successful commercially, but also help them be, these agents of change through their reinvestment of themselves. So, as I end, I'll just ask you this question. What does the next 10 years look like for Ron Rose? Next 10 years. 10 years. Next 10 years in the Philippines. I know part of it's surfing, for sure, right? But apart from surfing, finding the best waves. What's the next 10 years? Like, are you working on any cool projects at the moment?
So, I think there's a few things, right? Like one, having worked this hard for probably close to a decade, I've neglected a few personal life goals, right?
Yeah.
And I'm busy catching up with some of those, which I think has been very good.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say this, and I said this even before, I'm always trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I think it's likely going to be something related to the Philippines.
Yeah.
Probably, in a relatively unexpected industry.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where the opportunity, the impact is. And, I tend to talk after I do stuff, not before. So you will not hear so many future projections from me. That's the truth.
Well, Ron, can't wait to see what the next big project is. We will be waiting in the wings, we know, but no matter what it is, it'll be something with purpose, and we know you're going to be putting your blood, sweat, and tears in that. Right? And I want to thank you for spending time with us today in HIPE Stories. That was Ron Hose, a key figure in the local startup scene who continues to shape the ecosystem. Follow HIPE on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Also, follow Rappler's YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. If you want to continue this conversation, you can do so in the business chat room of the Rappler Communities app. Download on your mobile by scanning the QR codes below. It's available for download on iOS and Android. Just register for an account and click on the Communities tab and join the business chat room. I'm Manny Ayala, and you've been listening to Rappler Presents HIPE Stories.